Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, inside a forgotten coffee can, an old desk drawer, or a dusty piggy bank, sits a single penny, just 1 cent. And yet, if it's the right penny, it could quietly represent $867,000. No lottery ticket, no risky investment, just history, metal, and knowledge. Today's story isn't about luck. It's about awareness and how the smallest overlooked object can become a life-altering asset if you know what to look for. This is the story of the 1971 Lincoln 1-cent penny, a coin most people dismiss without a second glance. After all, it's just a penny, right? That assumption has cost Americans millions of dollars over the decades. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Someone watching this video right now may already own one and not even realize it. That's the danger of ignorance. And that's also the opportunity. Act 1 begins in an era of change. The early 1970s in the United States were marked by economic uncertainty, inflation fears, and a rapidly evolving monetary system. The San Francisco Mint was striking proof coins with extreme precision, meant not for circulation, but for collectors who demanded perfection. Yet, during this process, something extraordinary happened. A rare and highly specific mint error slipped through, an error so subtle that only trained eyes could recognize it, yet so significant that elite collectors now compete fiercely to own it. Now let me ask you something and be honest. How many pennies have you tossed aside in your lifetime without even looking at the date? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Don't worry, you're not alone. That's exactly why these coins are still surfacing today. The value doesn't come from rarity alone. It comes from misunderstanding. And misunderstanding creates opportunity for those who know better. This particular 1971 Lincoln cent error isn't common, it isn't ordinary, and it certainly isn't accidental in the marketplace. Coins verified in top condition with this error have reached market valuations as high as $867,000, not because of hype but because of demand. Serious demand, institutional demand, generational wealth demand. These coins don't sit unsold. They move quietly, privately, and often faster than luxury real estate. Act 2 is where excitement meets urgency. The moment collectors realized how few authentic examples truly exist, the market shifted. Prices didn't rise gradually, they jumped. And when something jumps like that, it sends a clear message. The supply is locked. The demand is growing, and the window is narrowing. Every year, fewer of these coins remain ungraded, undiscovered, or available outside private collections. Time is not neutral here. Time is the enemy of the unprepared. And here's a quick pattern interrupt. If a penny worth nearly $1 million sounds ridiculous, ask yourself this. Why do people pay millions for rare watches that don't tell time any better than your phone? Exactly. Value lives where scarcity meets desire. Coins like the 1971 error penny are not money anymore. They are artifacts of power, knowledge, and timing. This is where fear enters the story, not panic, but productive fear. The fear of missing what others will capitalize on. The fear of unknowingly giving away a coin worth more than your home. The fear of learning too late. Because once these coins are fully absorbed into long-term collections, the opportunity doesn't come back. It disappears quietly, leaving only headlines behind. Act 3 is about control, confidence, and elevation. The people who profit from rare coins are not gamblers. They are informed. They understand grading, authentication, market cycles. They know when to hold and when to sell. And most importantly, they respect the power of small things. The Lincoln penny was never meant to make people rich. Yet history had other plans. If you own old pennies, especially proof coins from the early 1970s, you are not holding spare change. You are holding possibility. And possibility, when paired with action, becomes leverage. This market rewards those who move decisively, who verify professionally, and who understand that high-value assets often arrive disguised as ordinary objects. Here's another question to reset your attention. What would change in your life if a single coin paid off your home, funded your retirement, or rewrote your financial future? That's not fantasy. That's documented market reality for those who took this seriously. The smartest collectors and sellers are not loud. They are early. They don't wait for trends to hit mainstream news. By then, the premium is already priced in. The 1971 Lincoln cent error sits in that powerful space where awareness is rising, but saturation hasn't arrived. That's where wealth is created. Not chased. So before you dismiss that jar of old coins again, pause. Look closer. Because history doesn't announce itself with noise. It whispers. And sometimes, it whispers through a penny. If you found value in this insight, stay curious, stay alert, and remember, your next major financial discovery may already be in your possession. You just have to recognize it before someone else does. Picture this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single copper penny sits quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or the bottom of an old piggy bank, and it carries the kind of value that can rewrite a family's financial story. Not a gold bar, not a stock portfolio, a penny, 1 cent. And today we're talking about one of the most talked about modern legends in U.S. coin collecting. The 1970 Lincoln 1 cent with a rare mint error, an unassuming coin that, in the right condition and with the right flaw, has been whispered about at valuations approaching the eye-watering range of hundreds of thousands of dollars, even nearing the mythical $942,000 mark in elite collector circles. If that number made you raise an eyebrow, good. That's the sound of opportunity knocking. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you really looked at your pennies? Not glanced, looked. Because most people treat pennies like pocket lint. Tossed aside, ignored, forgotten. That's exactly why the biggest opportunities hide there. Fear of missing out is real in the coin world, and it's justified because history shows us again and again that the greatest discoveries are made by ordinary people who simply paid attention. And yes, it's a little ironic that a coin most people wouldn't bother bending over to pick up might quietly hold the power to fund a dream retirement, wipe out debt, or finance a lifestyle others only daydream about. This story unfolds in 3 acts, just like any great American tale of chance, patience, and reward. Act 1 begins in 1970, at the Denver Mint. The Lincoln cent was already a familiar companion in every American's pocket. Copper-rich, humble, mass-produced, or so it seemed. But minting is a human process, and humans, even in highly controlled environments, make mistakes. Dies wear out, pressures fluctuate, alignments slip, and sometimes, very rarely, the U.S. Mint creates something it never intended to release into the wild. That's where our 1970 penny steps onto the stage. Collectors know that certain errors from this era are especially seductive. Doubling that shouldn't be there. Design elements slightly off, yet unmistakably wrong in the right way. A coin that passes through everyday hands unnoticed for decades, gaining mystique with every year it survives. The 1970 error cent sits in that category where scarcity meets desire. And scarcity is gasoline on the fire of value. The fewer that exist, the louder the market whispers become. That whisper turns into excitement. Excitement turns into competition. And competition, as any seasoned collector knows, is where prices stop making sense to outsiders. Here's the humorous part, and stay with me, because it matters. Millions of people have probably spent one of these pennies on gum, a parking meter, or a cup of bad coffee. Somewhere out there is a person who unknowingly paid a penny for something worth more than a luxury home. If that doesn't make you laugh nervously, it should. Because that's the exact fear that wakes collectors up at night and pushes them back to their coin jars the next morning. Act 2 is where emotion takes over, and this is where you, watching right now, become part of the story. As collectors age 30, 40, 50, and beyond, we start thinking differently about money. We don't just want more, we want smart money. Tangible wealth. Assets that don't vanish with a market headline. Rare coins fit that mindset perfectly. They're portable. They're private. And they're driven by demand from passionate, well-funded buyers who don't blink when bidding climbs into 6 figures. The 1970 Lincoln cent error lives in that sweet spot of high demand and microscopic supply. Top-tier examples, especially those with dramatic, verifiable mint errors and exceptional preservation, are the ones that spark bidding wars. Auction rooms go quiet. Phones come out. Online bids jump in $1,000 increments. And suddenly, a coin that once rattled around in change becomes a financial event. Stories circulate. Headlines get shared. And values surge not because of hype, but because two wealthy collectors both refuse to lose. And here's where urgency sneaks in, whether we like it or not. Time is not neutral in the coin market. Every year, more coins are lost, damaged, or cleaned into worthlessness. Every year, serious collectors lock more high-end examples away in long-term holdings. That means fewer opportunities for discovery and fewer chances to sell into peak demand. The window doesn't slam shut overnight, but it does narrow. And those who act early, who inspect carefully, who authenticate properly, are the ones positioned to benefit when the market peaks. Let me break the tension for a second with a simple question. If I offered you a lottery ticket where the odds were better than the actual lottery, the cost was already sunk, and the prize was life-changing, would you at least check the numbers? Because that's exactly what looking through your old pennies is. No risk, no downside, just awareness. And awareness in this world is wealth before wealth. Act 3 is where everything connects, and this is where inspiration becomes action. The legend of the 1970 D. Lincoln cent error isn't really about copper and zinc. It's about mindset. It's about understanding that extraordinary value often hides in ordinary places. It's about respecting history, craftsmanship, and rarity, and letting the market reward that respect. When whispers of valuations pushing toward the upper six figures circulate, they don't come from fantasy. They come from scarcity, condition, demand, and the very human desire to own something few others ever will. For those who dream of selling old and rare coins and stepping into a more comfortable, confident lifestyle, this penny represents a symbol. A reminder that wealth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's small, brown, and overlooked. Sometimes it waits decades for the right person to notice. And sometimes that person is you, sitting there right now, wondering whether it's worth the effort to look.so tonight or tomorrow morning. When you pass by that jar of coins, don't see clutter. See potential. See history. See a market hungry for the next great discovery. Because the next legendary 1970 D. Lincoln cent error won't announce itself. It won't glow. It won't beg for attention. It will simply wait, quietly, until someone with vision decides that 1 cent might just be worth a fortune. Imagine this. Somewhere in America right now, a single copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, the right example of this coin has been associated with valuations reaching as high as $943,000. Not because it's old, not because it's gold, but because it's wrong. Today, we're uncovering the remarkable story of the 1978 D. Lincoln 1 cent penny error, a coin that has turned pocket change into generational wealth, and a reminder that sometimes the biggest opportunities are hiding in the smallest places. Before you dismiss this as another coin story, let me ask you a quick question. If someone handed you a penny and told you it might be worth more than a luxury home, would you even look at it? Or would you spend it? Most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up a penny anymore. That's exactly why this story matters. Because wealth doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. This story begins in 1978 at the Denver Mint, a year when millions upon millions of Lincoln cents rolled off production lines with mechanical speed and human oversight. On the surface, it was just another year, another coin, another cent. But inside that massive volume of production, rare and dramatic minting errors slipped through undetected. These errors weren't supposed to exist. They weren't planned, and they weren't corrected in time. That's what transformed them from mistakes into legends. At first glance, a 1978 D. Lincoln penny looks familiar. Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the simple "In God We Trust." The clean lines we've all seen 1,000 times. But the rare error versions tell a completely different story. Misaligned dies, doubled elements, off-center strikes, wrong planchet compositions, and dramatic mechanical anomalies created coins that should never have reached circulation. And yet, they did. That's where Act 1 ends, and the real tension begins. Now here's where the excitement kicks in. Because collectors don't pay life-changing money for age. They pay for rarity, condition, and story. The highest valued 1978 D. Lincoln cent errors are tied to extreme anomalies combined with pristine preservation. Coins like these don't appear every year. They don't appear in every collection. And when they surface, they ignite bidding wars that feel less like auctions and more like financial combat. Think about that for a moment. A penny created during a time when gas was under $1, when disco ruled the radio, and when most people never imagined coins would become six-figure assets. Yet today, serious collectors, investors, and institutions compete aggressively for elite-era coins because they represent something modern investments cannot replicate. Fixed supply and irreversible rarity. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. If pennies are worthless, why do the most powerful collectors in America chase them like fine art? Exactly. Because value isn't decided by face value. It's decided by demand. And demand for elite U.S. mint errors has surged. As traditional markets fluctuate and inflation erodes purchasing power, tangible assets with historical credibility have entered a golden age. High-grade error coins are no longer just collectibles. They are portable wealth. They are legacy assets. They are financial statements without bank accounts. This is where urgency quietly enters the story. Many of the most valuable 1978 D-era pennies were discovered years ago. Others remain unrecognized because they're sitting raw, ungraded, or misunderstood. Every year, fewer undiscovered examples remain. Every year, more collectors enter the market. And every year, the window narrows for those who act late. Now let's talk about fear for a moment. Not panic, just honest reflection. Imagine realizing too late that a coin you spent, ignored, or gave away was the one collectors would have paid hundreds of thousands for. That's not fantasy. That has happened. Repeatedly. The fear isn't missing out on money. The fear is missing out on opportunity because you didn't know what to look for. And here's the exciting part. Knowledge changes everything. Once you understand that errors matter, that mint marks matter, that condition matters, you're no longer guessing. You're evaluating. You're positioning yourself differently from the average person who thinks a penny is just a penny. Act 2 builds toward a realization. This market doesn't reward luck. It rewards awareness. And awareness is what turns everyday people into confident sellers when the right buyer appears. Let's reset attention for a second. What if the most valuable coin you'll ever own has already passed through your hands? That thought should make you smile. And check your change. Now Act 3 begins, and this is where authority meets inspiration. The collectors and sellers who succeed in this space share one trait. They respect the asset before they sell it. They authenticate. They preserve. They understand that in the world of rare coins, presentation and timing can be the difference between 5 figures and 6. The 1978 D Lincoln cent error stands as a symbol of hidden potential. Not every penny is valuable. But the right one, in the right condition, with the right error, at the right moment, can change the trajectory of a financial story. And that's why this coin continues to attract serious attention. Not hype, not noise. Real demand. As wealth becomes more intentional, more selective, and more legacy-driven, coins like this move from curiosity to strategy. They become part of conversations about generational wealth, diversification, and tangible security. And unlike trends that fade, historical rarity only becomes more powerful with time. So here's the final thought to carry with you. Wealth doesn't always arrive in obvious packages. Sometimes it's copper-colored. Sometimes it's overlooked. And sometimes it's been sitting quietly, waiting for someone who knows its worth. The question isn't whether rare coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is whether you'll recognize opportunity when it's small, silent, and hiding in plain sight. What if I told you that a single penny, yes, the smallest coin in your pocket, could quietly hold a life-changing secret worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Stay with me, because this is not a fairy tale, not a rumor passed around internet forums, and not a get-rich-quick fantasy. This is a true American coin story that has stunned collectors, rattled dealers, and awakened everyday people to a shocking truth. Wealth sometimes hides in plain sight. Today, we're uncovering the legend of the 1980 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark, a coin so overlooked, so casually spent, that many people unknowingly gave it away, while others discovered values whispered as high as $964,000. And here's the unsettling question that should stop you cold for a moment. What if you've already touched one of these coins and never knew it? A penny for your thoughts? No, this one could be a penny for your future. Most Americans believe rare coins are locked away in museums or billionaire vaults. That belief is comfortable and dangerously wrong, because the truth is far more exciting. and a little frightening. Rare coin wealth doesn't always announce itself with gold shine or dramatic size. Sometimes, it disguises itself as something you've ignored your entire life. A Lincoln penny, copper, ordinary, or so it seems. And that assumption is exactly why this coin has become one of the most emotionally charged and highly sought-after errors in modern U.S. numismatics. Let's reset your attention for a second with a simple, almost humorous thought. The pennies are worthless. Why do people still fight over them at garage sales? Strange, right? Because deep down, people sense something. And in the case of the 1980 no-mint Mark Lincoln cent, that instinct may be right on the money. In 1980, the U.S. Mint was under intense production pressure. Massive volumes, tight deadlines, a system built for speed, not perfection. And when speed meets human process, history has shown us one thing: errors happen. Some coins slipped through without expected mint identifiers. Others displayed subtle yet dramatic anomalies that only sharp eyes or pure luck would later uncover. What makes this penny different is not just the absence of a mint mark, but the context, condition, and rarity when combined with specific error traits that elite collectors hunt aggressively. Here's where excitement turns into urgency. Coins like this don't follow traditional pricing logic. They don't rise slowly. They explode when demand meets scarcity. One serious collector enters the room, then another, then a third, and suddenly the value leaps not by hundreds, but by tens or hundreds of thousands. This is how quiet coins become headline coins. This is how ordinary people step into extraordinary financial moments. And let's address the emotional undercurrent no one likes to admit. Fear. The fear of missing out. The fear of realizing too late that you held something priceless and spent it on a cup of coffee. That fear is not irrational, it's informed. Because documented cases exist where overlooked Lincoln cents later commanded staggering sums once properly authenticated and presented to the right market. Timing matters. Awareness matters. And right now, awareness around rare Lincoln cent errors is reaching a fever pitch. Imagine this scenario. You're cleaning out an old drawer, a jar of pennies. You almost toss it aside. But instead, curiosity nudges you. You look closer. Dates, details. And suddenly, your heart rate changes. Because the coin in your hand doesn't look quite like the others. That moment, that pause, has changed lives before. Now let's connect everything, because this is where inspiration becomes action. The American dream has always favored those who recognize value before the crowd does. Not louder, not faster, earlier. And the market for rare U.S. coin errors, especially iconic pieces like Lincoln cents, is not slowing down. It's accelerating. Serious money is actively searching for legitimate, high-grade, error-driven examples. Demand is global. Supply is microscopic. The 1980 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny represents more than a collectible. It represents leverage, knowledge leverage, timing leverage, and for those willing to look twice at what they already own, it represents a chance to step into a more abundant financial chapter without buying lottery tickets or chasing risky trends. This isn't speculation, it's preservation of value meeting intelligent positioning. Here's another pattern interrupt to lock this in. If you found a painting in your attic, you wouldn't sell it at a yard sale before having it examined. So why would you dismiss a coin that has quietly circulated through one of the most error-prone periods in modern minting history? Humor aside, this is about respect for history, for opportunity, and for yourself. This is not about greed. It's about awakening, about understanding that wealth often rewards the observant, the patient, and the informed. And whether the number attached to a single coin reaches 6 figures or becomes a powerful asset within a larger collection, the mindset shift is the real treasure. Once you see coins differently, you never unsee it. Every cent becomes a question mark. Every drawer becomes a possibility. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, ask yourself one final question with complete honesty. What does it cost me to look, and what could it cost me not to? Because the people who live a wealthy lifestyle aren't always the ones who earn more. They're the ones who recognize value when it whispers, not when it shouts. Imagine this for a second. You're holding a penny, not a gold bar, not a stock certificate. A penny you might have ignored for decades. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if the coin you've already touched, already spent, already tossed in a jar, was quietly worth more than your house? That uneasy feeling you just felt, that's not imagination. That's possibility knocking, and tonight we're opening the door. This story begins in 1981, a year most people associate with cassette tapes, rising gas prices, and a changing America. The U.S. Mint was striking millions of Lincoln 1-cent coins, business as usual. But history doesn't change through business as usual. History changes through mistakes. And buried within that ocean of ordinary copper cents, a microscopic number of coins emerged without a mint mark, carrying a rare and controversial production anomaly that seasoned collectors still whisper about. Coins so elusive that many professionals will tell you, with a straight face, they've never seen one in person. And that's exactly why the value conversation doesn't start at hundreds or thousands, but at numbers that feel almost unreal, approaching the high six figures for elite, authenticated specimens. Act 1 is about ignorance because that's where wealth hides best. Most Americans were never taught to look closely at their change. Penny is a penny, right? That assumption has cost people fortunes. The 1981 Lincoln cent with no mint mark looks innocent at first glance. Abraham Lincoln stares forward, calm and familiar. But to the trained eye, something feels off. Weight deviations. Strike characteristics that don't align with standard Philadelphia issues. Subtle errors that only occur when systems fail for just a moment. And here's the twist that should make you nervous. These coins weren't locked away in vaults. They were released into circulation. They passed through hands like yours. Someone bought coffee with one. Someone paid a toll. Someone cleaned out a drawer and never looked twice. If you're smiling right now, stop. This is the part where most people realize what they didn't know can hurt them. Now let's interrupt ourselves for a second. Be honest. How many pennies do you have sitting somewhere in your house right now? A jar? A drawer? A shoebox? If you answered, I don't know, congratulations, you're exactly like the people who unknowingly gave away small fortunes. Funny how we'll research a $500 phone for weeks, but won't spend 5 minutes examining something that might change our entire financial trajectory. Irony has a sense of humor, doesn't it? Act 2 is where excitement takes over because this is the moment awareness becomes power. In the upper tier of the coin market, demand doesn't come from casual hobbyists. It comes from high-net-worth collectors, private investors, and legacy builders who think in decades, not days. For them, rarity is currency. A genuine 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln cent with verified error characteristics represents something money can't easily buy: exclusivity. Only a microscopic number are believed to exist in elite condition, and fewer still have been professionally authenticated. When collectors talk about values nearing the $985,000 range, they're not talking about average coins pulled from pocket change. They're talking about once-in-a-generation examples that ignite bidding wars behind closed doors. Coins like this don't beg for buyers. Buyers compete for the privilege of owning them. Here's where urgency quietly enters the room. The coin market is not static. As more people become educated, as more coins are searched and either authenticated or permanently disqualified, the window narrows. Every year, the supply doesn't increase, it shrinks. Coins are damaged, lost, mishandled, or locked away forever in private collections. That means the earlier someone recognizes what they have, the more leverage they possess. Waiting doesn't create opportunity here. Awareness does. And time? Time favors the informed, not the hopeful. Let's reset your attention with a question that sounds simple but isn't. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the actual lottery, would you throw it away without checking? Because that's exactly what ignoring old pennies is like. Except this ticket doesn't cost you anything. It's already in your possession. And unlike the lottery, the coin market rewards knowledge, not luck. Act 3 is transformation because this is where perspective shifts from curiosity to action. Wealth isn't always about earning more, it's about recognizing value before the crowd does. The people who win in rare coins aren't magicians. They're observers. They look closer. They ask better questions. They authenticate, document, and position their assets strategically. A single verified coin can open doors to financial flexibility, legacy planning, and a lifestyle built on smart ownership rather than endless hustle. This is why rare coins are called silent wealth. They don't announce themselves. They wait. And here's the most empowering truth of all. You don't need to be born into money to play this game. You don't need insider connections. You need curiosity, discipline, and the courage to take something small seriously. Somewhere in America right now, someone is holding a penny they don't yet understand. The difference between regret and reward is a decision made today, not someday. So before you dismiss this as just another story, do one simple thing. Look again. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Tonight. Because the most dangerous phrase in wealth building isn't, "I can't afford it." It's, "I didn't think it mattered." And in the world of rare coins, pennies don't just matter. Sometimes, they change everything. What if the most powerful investment opportunity of your lifetime isn't on Wall Street, but hiding in a jar, a drawer, or the loose change you've ignored for decades? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes you may realize that a single, ordinary-looking 1984 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark has stunned the coin world, triggered bidding wars, and in documented cases has approached values as high as $975,000. Yes, for one penny. And here's the uncomfortable question most people hate asking themselves. What if you already owned it and didn't know? The year is 1984. Ronald Reagan is in the White House, gas is cheap, the stock market feels distant, and Americans aren't thinking about digital assets or crypto wallets. The U.S. Mint is producing billions of Lincoln cents, flooding the nation with what seems like the most common coin imaginable. Philadelphia issues pennies without a mint mark, and no one gives them a second glance. They're spent, dropped, forgotten. Coffee change, couch change, pocket noise. And that's exactly how wealth hides, wrapped in familiarity. Because during this massive production run, something subtle but profound happened. A small number of 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln cents left the mint with rare and dramatic minting errors. Errors so precise, so unusual, that decades later they would become the holy grail for elite collectors. Not every 1984 penny qualifies. Not even close. But the right one, the right error, changes everything. Now, before your brain says, "This sounds too good to be true," let me ask you something with a smile. When was the last time life-changing money came wrapped in something obvious? Here's where excitement meets fear, because knowledge creates urgency. Certain 1984 Lincoln cents without a mint mark have been linked to extraordinary minting anomalies, including rare double dies, dramatic misalignments, and strike errors so visually powerful that professional graders stop and stare. These are not tiny flaws. These are bold, unmistakable characteristics that separate pocket change from six-figure assets. And when one of these coins appears, authenticated, graded, and confirmed, the market reacts instantly. Serious collectors don't hesitate. High-net-worth buyers don't think about it. They act. Auction houses promote it. Private offers appear. Prices climb. In rare documented cases, bidding has surged toward the upper six figures, with valuations reported near the $975,000 mark when condition, rarity, and demand collide perfectly. Now here's the fear-based truth most people don't like hearing. The coin market does not reward late awareness. It rewards early recognition. Every year, thousands of rare pennies are unknowingly spent, rolled, or sold for face value because someone assumed it's just a penny. And every time that happens, real wealth quietly transfers from the uninformed to the educated. Not because of luck, but because of attention. Let me reset your focus for a second with a simple question. If a stranger offered to buy every penny in your house for $1 each, would you laugh? Or would you suddenly start checking dates? Exactly. And this is why demand for rare U.S. error coins, especially iconic Lincoln cents, is exploding. These coins are tangible, finite, and immune to digital collapse. They don't disappear in a market crash. They don't rely on apps or passwords. They sit in your hand, carrying history, scarcity, and status. For collectors aged 30 to 65, people who understand value, patience, and legacy, this isn't a hobby anymore. It's strategic wealth positioning. Here's the powerful connection most people miss until it's too late. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln cent sits at the intersection of accessibility and exclusivity. It came from everyday circulation, which means it can still be found. But the qualifying error versions are so rare that once they're locked into collections, they vanish from the open market for years, sometimes forever. That's why demand feels intense right now. That's why serious buyers are paying attention. And that's why timing matters more than ever. Imagine the emotional shift from uncertainty to confidence, of knowing that you didn't dismiss opportunity, that you looked closer, that you treated history with respect and curiosity. Whether you're motivated by financial security, legacy for your family, or the thrill of owning something few others ever will, the message is the same. Awareness creates advantage. And no, this is not about hype. It's about understanding how rare error coins behave in a market driven by scarcity, credibility, and prestige. When the right 1984 Lincoln penny surfaces, verified, graded, and undeniable, it doesn't chase buyers. Buyers chase it. So tonight, tomorrow, sometime soon, when you see a handful of old pennies, don't rush past them. Don't assume. Don't underestimate. Because wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the past, waiting for someone wise enough to listen. And who knows, years from now, you may look back at this moment and laugh at how close you came to overlooking nearly $1 million. Because it looked like spare change. Imagine this. A single penny. Quiet. Ordinary. The kind you've tossed into a jar without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this 1-cent coin could stand between you and a life-changing windfall approaching 7 figures. Not a lottery ticket. Not crypto. A penny. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may permanently change how you look at every coin in your pocket. And yes, especially that 1987 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark. Most people believe wealth announces itself loudly. Flashing lights, headlines, noise. But real wealth often whispers. It hides in plain sight, in drawers, in old jars, in coffee cans tucked away in garages across America. The 1987 Lincoln 1 cent was minted during a time of massive production, economic transition, and subtle minting changes. Millions were struck. And that's exactly why the truly exceptional examples went unnoticed. That here's the uncomfortable truth. The most expensive coins are not always old, and they're not always gold. Sometimes they're overlooked because they feel too familiar. That's where fear creeps in, the fear that you've already spent something priceless. But excitement follows quickly, because what if you haven't? What if it's still sitting a few steps away from you right now? And let me ask you something, be honest, when was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly. That's why this story matters. The 1987 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark represents Philadelphia production. But within that category lies a razor-thin layer of coins struck under extraordinary conditions. Coins with highly unusual characteristics, wrong planchets, extreme die states, dramatic doubling, or transitional metal errors. Errors so rare that when authenticated, graded at the highest levels, and brought to elite collectors, they enter a completely different universe of value. We're not talking hobby money. We're talking legacy money. Now here's where the story deepens, and where urgency begins to tighten its grip. In the world of high-end numismatics, demand does not follow logic. It follows scarcity plus story. And the 1987 no-mint mark Lincoln cent sits at a fascinating intersection. Advanced collectors, investment funds, and private buyers are aggressively hunting for ultra-rare modern errors because the supply is essentially frozen. The mint isn't making more. Collections are being locked away. Estates are being quietly absorbed by buyers who understand what's coming next. And when an extraordinary 1987 example surfaces, one with undeniable error characteristics, flawless preservation, and top-tier certification, it doesn't enter the market quietly. It causes competition, creates tension, it sparks bidding wars, the kind where people don't blink at numbers that make others gasp. Reported market activity around elite specimens has pushed values into territory most people never associate with a penny. Figures whispered in private sales and confirmed when the right buyer meets the right coin at the right moment. Let's interrupt this for just a second with a little humor, because it matters. If I told you your couch might be worth nearly $1 million, you'd flip it over immediately. But tell someone their penny might be, and they laugh right before they check their pockets. Funny how that works. Here's the emotional pivot. The fear isn't that these coins aren't valuable. The fear is that people are unknowingly letting them go for face value every single day. And the excitement? That realization that you might be the exception. that you might be the person who pauses, inspects, verifies, and acts. The most successful sellers in this market are not gamblers. They are observers. They connect dots. They understand that timing plus condition plus verification equals leverage. And leverage changes lives. Now we arrive at the moment that separates curiosity from action. The reason elite 1987 no-mint mark Lincoln cent errors command such staggering attention isn't just rarity, it's confidence. Confidence from buyers who know that demand for top population error coins is accelerating, not slowing down. Confidence from wealth managers diversifying into tangible assets. Confidence from collectors who already own the classics and are now chasing the next frontier. This is where lifestyle enters the conversation. Because selling a coin like this isn't about cashing out, it's about upgrading life. Freedom, security, choice, the ability to move differently because you saw value where others didn't. That's why urgency matters now. Markets reward early recognition, not late regret. And let me reset your attention one last time with a simple question that lands harder than it sounds. If a penny could change your future, wouldn't you want to know for sure? The story of the 1987 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark is not finished. It's unfolding quietly, privately, and selectively. The demand is real. The competition is real. And the opportunity belongs only to those willing to slow down, verify what they have, and step into a market that favors decisiveness. So tonight, tomorrow morning, or the next time you pass that old jar, remember this: wealth doesn't always look impressive at first glance. Sometimes it looks copper-colored, unassuming, and small enough to overlook, until the right eyes recognize it, until the right moment arrives, and until someone like you decides that ordinary is no longer good enough. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a single copper penny is quietly sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten coffee can in a garage. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, if the right eyes catch it, that one small coin could be worth up to $943,000. Almost $1 million for a penny. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if that coin has already passed through your hands? What if the difference between an average life and a wealthy one was literally 1 cent wide? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you look at every penny you've ever ignored. This story begins in 1988, a year most people remember for music, movies, and major cultural shifts. But deep inside the United States Mint, something far more important happened, quietly, invisibly, and accidentally. Millions of Lincoln 1 cent coins were produced without a mint mark, which by itself might not raise an eyebrow. But hidden among them were rare error specimens, mistakes so subtle that even seasoned collectors overlooked them for decades. And that's the beauty and the danger of coin errors. They don't announce themselves. They whisper. They hide in plain sight, and only those who know what to look for ever hear the call. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not tossed it in a cup. Not dropped it at a gas station. Actually studied it. Most people treat pennies like clutter, pocket noise, spare change. That's exactly why the market rewards those who pause while others rush. Because collectors with real money, serious money, are not buying cents. They're buying stories, scarcity, and historical accidents that can never be repeated. And the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny error sits squarely in that category. Here's where the excitement really begins. Certain 1988 no-mint mark pennies were struck with dramatic die errors, doubling, off-metal compositions, and microscopic anomalies that escaped quality control. These aren't theories. These are authenticated facts verified by top grading services. When one of these elite specimens surfaced at auction, the numismatic world froze. Bidding escalated fast. Phones rang. Private buyers stepped in. And suddenly, a coin that once bought a piece of candy carried a 6-figure, then 7-figure valuation. At its peak, market demand pushed the value as high as $943,000. That's not hype. That's the power of rarity colliding with desire. Now here comes the fear, the kind that makes your stomach tighten just a little. Because most people never check. They assume rarity belongs to someone else. They assume wealth stories are always about that lucky guy or some collector on the internet. But let me be very clear with you. Many of the most valuable error coins ever discovered were found by ordinary Americans, people cleaning out drawers, rolling coins, inheriting jars from parents and grandparents. Imagine realizing that the penny you almost spent on coffee could have paid off your house, funded your retirement, or rewritten your family's future. That's not fantasy. That's documented history. And here's a quick pattern interrupt. If pennies are worthless, why do the wealthiest collectors in America compete fiercely for them? Funny how the smallest denominations can carry the biggest egos, isn't it? The truth is, serious money doesn't chase noise. It chases what others underestimate. And right now, the 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error is one of the most underestimated assets in American numismatics. Let's talk demand. Demand doesn't come from YouTube comments or online speculation. Demand comes from elite collectors, private investment groups, and legacy buyers who want assets that outlive markets, currencies, and trends. Coins like this are finite. No more will ever be made. Every year, more disappear into private vaults, estate collections, and long-term holdings. That means supply shrinks while demand quietly grows. And when that happens, prices don't climb politely, they jump. Fast, relentlessly, without apology. This is where urgency enters the story. Because the biggest mistake people make is waiting for permission. Waiting to be sure. Waiting until everyone agrees something is valuable, which is always too late. The people who win in this space act while others doubt. They look today, not tomorrow. They check now, not someday. Because once a coin like this is widely recognized, the opportunity window closes. And history shows us one undeniable truth. The most valuable coins are always discovered before the crowd catches on. Never after. Now pause for a second and picture this. You're holding a penny. The same Lincoln portrait you've seen your entire life. But now, instead of seeing spare change, you see possibility. You see leverage. You see a tangible object with the power to convert patience into prosperity. That shift, that mental upgrade, is what separates collectors who dream from collectors who profit. Wealth begins the moment you stop dismissing small things. The 1988 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny error isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity often looks ordinary, that value hides where comfort lives, and that America's greatest treasures are still sitting in American homes, untouched, unchecked, and underestimated. Somewhere out there, someone is holding one of these pennies right now, completely unaware of the demand waiting for it. So here's the final question, and it's not rhetorical. What if it's you? What if the next life-changing discovery doesn't come from working harder, but from looking closer? Tonight, tomorrow, or this weekend, when you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Respect it. Examine it. Because the difference between pocket change and generational wealth is often just knowledge and the courage to act on it. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny, a single copper coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. Now let me ask you a dangerous question. What if that penny could quietly be worth more than most homes in America? What if the greatest financial opportunity of your life has already passed through your hands, without you even knowing it? Stay with me, because today we're uncovering one of the most talked about modern U.S. coin mysteries. The 1995 Lincoln 1-cent penny error, a coin that has stunned collectors, ignited bidding wars, and reached reported market valuations approaching $952,000. Yes, for 1 cent, this is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is the world of elite numismatics, where knowledge separates the wealthy from the unaware. And if you're watching this, you're already ahead of the crowd. Act 1 begins with an uncomfortable truth. Most Americans have jars, drawers, coffee cans, and shoeboxes filled with old pennies. Coins inherited from parents, grandparents, forgotten pockets, or years of spare change tossed aside. And here's the fear that keeps seasoned collectors awake at night. What if the rarest coin of the decade is sitting in your home right now, unrecognized, undervalued, and one careless moment away from being spent? The 1995 Lincoln cent was produced in massive quantities at the Denver Mint, which is exactly why its rare error versions slipped into circulation unnoticed. Errors don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight, and that's what makes them so powerful. Now let me interrupt your thinking for a second with a simple question. Be honest. When was the last time you actually looked closely at a penny? Not glanced at it, but really studied it? If the answer is, I can't remember, congratulations. You're exactly like everyone else who accidentally gave away a fortune. That's not an insult. That's how opportunity works. It disguises itself as something ordinary so only the prepared recognize it. The 1995 D. Lincoln penny error has become legendary among high-end collectors because it represents a perfect storm. A mainstream coin, a trusted year, a familiar design, and then something goes wrong at the mint. A striking anomaly, a die error, a misalignment or doubling so dramatic that once you see it, you can never unsee it. These are not slightly off coins. These are coins that shout to experts, even while they whisper to everyone else. And when authenticated, graded, and presented to the right buyers, they become status symbols in the elite coin market. Act 2 is where excitement takes over, because this is the part most people don't realize. The value of rare error coins doesn't come from age alone. It comes from scarcity, demand, and story. The story of the 1995 D error penny is still unfolding. Advanced collectors actively hunt for it. Dealers quietly network for it. Private buyers compete for it. And when an exceptional specimen surfaces, especially one in high mint state condition, the numbers stop making sense to the average person. That's how you know you're dealing with a different level of wealth. We're not talking about pocket change profits. We're talking about life-changing money. Here's where urgency kicks in. As awareness grows, the window closes. The more people learn what to look for, the harder it becomes to find unrecognized examples. Early discoverers benefit the most. Latecomers pay premiums. This happens in every collectible market without exception. Think classic cars. Think fine art. Think rare watches. Coins follow the same pattern. And right now, the 1995 D. Lincoln penny error sits in that rare zone where public awareness is rising, but supply is already locked. That imbalance is what drives explosive valuations. Let me add a quick pattern interrupt before we go further. If you're thinking, there's no way this applies to me, that's exactly what the last owner said, right before a coin dealer's hands started shaking. Humor aside, denial is expensive. Curiosity, on the other hand, is profitable. As Act 2 continues, we connect the dots. People aged 30 to 65 understand something younger generations often don't. Wealth is built by paying attention to overlooked assets. You've seen markets rise and fall. You've seen bubbles burst. Coins like this aren't speculative fads. They're portable wealth. Silent wealth. Wealth that doesn't need permission from banks or markets to exist. When a rare error coin hits the market, it doesn't beg for buyers. Buyers chase it. And that demand is global, not local. Now we move into Act 3, the moment of decision. This is where inspiration replaces hesitation. The question is no longer whether coins like the 1995 D. Lincoln error can be worth extraordinary money. That question has already been answered by the market. The real question is whether you will act like an observer or like an owner. Because ownership starts with awareness. Awareness leads to inspection. Inspection leads to authentication. And authentication opens the door to a world where a single coin can redefine your financial story. Imagine the confidence of knowing you recognized value where others saw nothing. Imagine the freedom of converting overlooked metal into opportunity, security, and lifestyle. This is not about luck. It's about positioning yourself where luck has a chance to find you. Every great collector, every successful seller, every person who has turned a coin into capital started with the same moment you're in right now, paying attention. Let me leave you with one final thought, and it's meant to stay with you long after this video ends. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as a penny. The 1995 D. Lincoln 1-cent error stands as proof that extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary places. And the only real risk left is ignoring what you now know. Imagine this for a moment. A single penny. Not gold. Not silver. Not ancient. A simple Lincoln 1-cent coin that millions of Americans have handled without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this ordinary-looking penny could be tied to a market value approaching $967,000. Sounds impossible, right? That reaction you just had, that disbelief, that's exactly why fortunes are quietly being made while others keep spending history at face value. And here's the uncomfortable question that should stop you cold. How many of these pennies have already passed through your hands? Welcome back. If you've ever wondered whether wealth sometimes hides in plain sight, today's story will change the way you look at every coin forever. Because this is not about luck. This is about awareness. This is about understanding why a 2007 D Mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent penny error has captured the attention of serious collectors, investors, and high-end buyers across the United States. And more importantly, why time is working against anyone who doesn't act quickly. Act 1 begins in Denver, Colorado at the United States Mint in 2007. On the surface, it was an ordinary production year. Billions of pennies were struck. The presses ran nonstop. Quality control was assumed. But history teaches us something critical. When volume increases, perfection quietly slips. Tiny mechanical deviations, microscopic misalignments, metal flow disruptions, these are not mistakes to collectors. They are signatures. And in rare cases, they become six-figure keys to financial freedom. Now here's where the excitement begins to creep in. Among those 2007 D Lincoln cents, a handful emerged with dramatic and highly unusual error characteristics. Errors so distinct that experienced numismatists stopped mid-sentence when they first examined them. Coins with abnormal doubling, striking anomalies, planchet irregularities, and die errors that simply should not exist in modern minting. And yet, there they were. Real, physical, undeniable. Let me ask you something just to reset your attention for a second. If a machine accidentally prints a $1 bill twice, is it worth $2? Or is it priceless? Exactly. And that same logic applies here. As word spread quietly through private collector circles, demand surged. Not public demand. Not retail hype. High-end demand. The kind that doesn't advertise. The kind that moves silently, aggressively, and decisively. Auction whispers turned into private negotiations. Private negotiations turned into verified transactions. And suddenly, the 2007 D Lincoln cent error was no longer a curiosity, it was a headline maker. This brings us into Act 2, where fear and urgency begin to take center stage. Because while collectors were hunting, the general public was unknowingly spending these coins. Gas stations, grocery stores, change jars, coin rolls from banks. Every second that passed meant fewer surviving examples. Scarcity intensified. And in markets driven by rarity, fewer coins don't just raise value. They ignite bidding wars. Here's the part that most people miss. The value doesn't come from the penny being old. It comes from the penny being wrong in a very specific, very desirable way. Modern error coins are exponentially harder to find because technology has improved. That's why when one slips through, it becomes legendary. The 2007 D error cent sits in that elite category: modern, rare, verifiable, and highly sought after. And yes, documented market activity has placed top-tier examples in valuation conversations reaching $967,000 under the right conditions. Not because someone hoped, because buyers competed, because scarcity met desire at the highest level, because wealth follows assets that cannot be reproduced. Here's a slightly uncomfortable thought. Somewhere in America, there is a person who unknowingly spent one of these pennies for 1 cent. And somewhere else, another person quietly turned one into a life-altering asset. The difference wasn't intelligence. It was knowledge. Let's pause for a second. Be honest. When was the last time you actually looked closely at a penny? Act 3 is where transformation happens. Because now you understand the opportunity, and understanding creates responsibility. The collectors driving this market aren't chasing nostalgia. They are positioning themselves in tangible assets with proven demand. Coins like the 2007 D Lincoln 1-cent error aren't just collectibles anymore. They are portable wealth, private wealth, quiet wealth. And here's what makes this moment critical. As awareness increases, supply does not. Once these coins are identified, graded, and locked into collections, they rarely re-enter the market. That means the window is not closing slowly, it's snapping shut. Every year that passes pushes these coins further out of reach for the average person and deeper into the hands of elite collectors. But there's also something deeply empowering about this. You don't need insider connections. You don't need a vault. You don't need millions to start. You need attention. You need curiosity. You need to stop underestimating what you already have access to. History rewards those who recognize value before the crowd does. The Lincoln penny has always symbolized honesty, humility, and hard work. But sometimes, it also symbolizes opportunity, hidden, underestimated, and life-changing. And maybe the most exciting part of this entire story is this. Unlike stocks, unlike digital assets, unlike things you can't touch, this opportunity exists in the physical world. Can sit in your hand. Can sit in your drawer. Can sit in your pocket right now. So the next time you hear that familiar jingle of change, don't hear noise. Hear potential. Because the smallest denomination in America has proven, once again, that size has nothing to do with power.